Hi folks, and welcome to the first Capra course masterclass. I'm Simon and this is Maria.
Hi everybody.
You may have seen both of us already on the actual lecture videos. Hi folks, and welcome bear with me one second. We've got a bit of echo here. Course masterclass. I'm Simon.
Hi everybody. Hi everybody.
You may have seen both of us already. Bear with me one second. We have a little bit of echo to sort out here. Hi folks, well, bear with me one second. Course masterclass. I'm Simon.
Hi everybody. Hi everybody.
You may have seen both of us. Oh, there we go. Sorry about that, folks. We had a little bit of echo on the line. One of the things we wanted to do is we're trying different formats for how we're going to run the masterclass. A couple of months ago, Google changed the Google Hangout software to YouTube Live. So we're still just trying to make sure that we're still trying to test what is the best way to run these particular masterclasses. For those of you watching live, on the actual YouTube channel, there's a chat section. So we have a window open where we'll see any of your comments. And of course, please feel free to watch this at a later date and comment on the Alumni Network forum. Maria and I, we're going to introduce ourselves a little bit more fully in a couple of minutes, but we really wanted to talk first about why we're actually doing the masterclass. What exactly is the masterclass? Some of you may have read on my blog, Transition Consciousness, some of the comments that you've been leaving about Capra course, and it's been really wonderful, especially with this fall 2016 course, to really hear about your comments, how it affected you, how it impacted you. But what Maria and I want to do, and a number of other people as well that we'll bring in, what we're looking to do is really support all of you who have done Capra course and really look at and really focus on the masterclasses on how we can really impact systems thinking, how we can really put systems thinking into practice around the world. Because the way in which Capra course is structured, the first half of the course looks at theory. The second half of the course looks at systemic solutions. But that's actually just part of this story, because there are many different people, many different businesses, types of organizations that could benefit from systems thinking. But the big question is, how do you actually reach that people? How do you actually reach those people that are really going to listen and who really want to work with you all on implementing systemic solutions? The other thing about Capra course is that it's wonderful that we have such a wide range of people doing the course. And particularly we have undergraduate students, we have quite a lot of PhD doctoral students who are really looking to add systems thinking to their particular subject of choice, which is just wonderful. And of course, there are people in business, people with your own practices, and also there are people from different types of consultancies who really want to add systems thinking to their particular type of consultancy. Or maybe you're already starting to think about systemic thinking and really look at how we can really engage people in business. So that's really the theory, and we really wanted to look at how we can best support all of you after graduating from the actual Capra course itself. How can we continue to really develop, build on the energy, the great energy and the great connections being built. So that was really why we thought about doing the masterclass. We've spoken to Fritjof and of course Mira, the course administrator. So we wanted to try this initial masterclass. We're going to be speaking for maybe about half an hour. Obviously, we'd love to get a lot of your feedback as well. We're going to be dealing with a lot of topics over the coming year. So really, we thought we'd have half an hour of an introduction just to introduce ourselves more fully, as opposed to just some of the chat that we've had and interactions on the forum. And hopefully, we'll just share a lot of our knowledge, a lot of our experiences working with major organizations, and really help you and give you some ideas for what to do. So that was really the initial thinking. obviously, you have I have chatted a lot with a lot of you on the forum already, but you haven't really had a chance to speak with Maria, who you will of course have seen during the lectures. We've been friends with Fritjof for quite a few years now, haven't we?
Mm-hmm.
And because we both live in Sao Paulo, it was wonderful to be invited by Fritjof, to join in and listen to the actual recording of Capra. So Maria, would you like to do a short introduction just to yourself?
Yeah, I've been working with organizations for a long time, and now more 20 years, more or less. And it's very nice to see nowadays that organizations are really engaged to develop a systemic way of seeing. And but of course, it is something relatively new if we talk about organizations, and they don't know where to start and from where. And we are doing our work helping these organizations and mostly leaders to see differently their organizations, because many of the tools organizations implement, like a balanced scorecard or other kind of management tools, they need, and they of course will be much more effective if the organization has a systemic kind of point of view about the process, about people, about the value chain. So this is the work we've been doing the last years, and we are lots to share.
Absolutely.
And this is why we are here, and I think it will be very nice to exchange ideas and listen how the difficulties and things you are
experiencing,
and
how we can help.
How can we help? So I'm very happy to be here in this first masterclass and the next ones.
So just talk a little bit more about why Maria and myself are working with companies. My background has been very much in product development, innovation, customer experience design. So I've always been interested in this aspect of experience. How do we experience the world? How do we experience a meaningful world? This has been a question of mine for a long time, even since studying psychology, which is my first degree. Maria, your background, you're an economist.
An economist.
And Maria is actually one of the most best regarded business strategists in Brazil. So Maria has been working for many years with some of Brazil's largest companies, businesses, and multinationals, as well, in conglomerates, helping them to develop their strategy. Now, when you help a business to develop the strategy, you also help the company to go through a program of very profound change, because a new strategy is, by its very nature, change.
One very important point, every time we have one strategy, we wanted to change the point we are now and the future. So it's a change in a sense. So we have to talk about what is necessary to change in order to execute the strategy. So if you really wanted to execute something new, something that you put you in another level of results, other level of delivering for the clients, you have to make change in your organization. And in order to do this change, you have to change your mental model, for instance, because in the point you are now is different from the point you wanted to be, and you designed your strategy exactly to be in a new point. So you have to do change, and this is why we help your organizations to see differently in order to be able to execute effectively their strategies.
Yeah, absolutely. We've had a comment come in from, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, Daniele, who's asking, do we have any experience in the healthcare field? Yes, absolutely. One of the case studies with Holonomics, we'll talk about Holonomics in a minute, is with Hospital Syrio-Libanese, one of the largest and most important hospitals in Latin America. It's very interesting working with them because in healthcare, you have so many people with so many perspectives and each person is critical. It's really interesting to look at healthcare from a systemic point of view, because one of the problems with healthcare is that there are many different companies, for example, the people who supply your health insurance, from a more financial perspective, to the people who are delivering the healthcare. And of course, there are people who are looking at healthcare from a more preventative point of view. So we'll talk a little bit about that later in this webinar, but it's a great question. And, oh, sorry.
Yeah, I would like just to say something. One of the tools that is very important to put in practice the systemic system view, is the communication. So the way we relate with other people is by communication. And communicate is something that is not just say the same language, but exactly to be able to listen the other person and the other point of view. So it's very important to work to people, mostly leaders, to really develop the skills of listening. So when you are able to listen, you are able to better communicate things and to communicate the strategy, for instance, and the behavior that is important to everybody have in order to really do the work. And in a healthy care, for instance, it's very important to have an alignment in the whole organization in order to really transmit to the client, to the patient, the comfort, the confidence in what is happening. So one thing that we will talk a little more later is about communication. So communication is one thing that we work a lot with companies.
And of course, Daniela, you mentioned, the systems view of life. One of the great insights from Fritjof, I really think this is a wonderful insight, is that, yes, we now need to shift our metaphor of what an organization is to a living system. But Fritjof is actually a little bit different, because Fritjof challenges us to look at which are the living bits of an organization and which bits of the organization are non-living. It's not just a case of that every single bit of the organization is living. So this is a topic, an insight from Fritjof, which bits are living, that we really work with and we talk about with our clients and the people who we're helping, to help them understand which bits are living and what does it really mean if a company is living. It's all about the transfer of data and information, but in a human living system. Exactly. It's about the communication of meaning. So we work really hard on really kind of interpreting what does a living system really mean? How is meaning being, how does meaning circulate across the whole organization?
And one important thing is, of course, when you have an organization, you have to have some structure. You have some rules, some things that you communicate to everybody, and everybody at least is in the same direction. But for instance, a process are living, and so if you have a process mapped, so things will happen in this sequence. Of course, when you have delicate things, you don't have to change without some procedures or anyway, but you have to understand that things are living, and sometimes things must be changed. And what we used to see in organizations is a little of fear to change things. So we have some kind of attachment about what we create and the process we map, and we don't want to change it. But we have to be very unattached
or detached.
Detached,
You've got to be
yeah.
detached
Sorry.
from things, yeah.
Detached to really be able to see what must be changed and why, and be able to, in agile, to communicate it to everybody involved in that particular process, for instance.
Yeah. So just to further our introduction, some of you may know already that we're also the authors of a book, Holonomics, Business Where People and Planet Matter, this book. And in this book, what we've actually done is to create or really write about what we call our holonomics approach. Now, it was wonderful for us actually to go through the writing process, because we shared an early manuscript with Fritjof and he provided some comments. And our book is divided up into 3 parts. The middle, I'll talk about the first bit at the end, but the middle part of our book is what we call the dynamics of nature. And this is very much the systems view of life, really looking at natural systems and what the insights mean for businesses. And then the final part is the dynamics of business, how you actually put these insights into practice. But the first part of our book that we really feel complements the systems view of life, and in fact, Fritjof does refer to this in his own work, of course, but he doesn't really expand on it, is the dynamics of seeing. And so, for example, in Capra course, this last edition of the course, we did talk about Maturana and Varela and, you know, the phenomenology. And it's really interesting to really go in depth into this. So we call it the Holonomics platform, the dynamics of seeing, the dynamics of nature, and the dynamics of business. But underlying all of that are the 5 universal human values of peace, truth, love, right action, and non-violence. And I think this, for me, is a really incredible part of Fritjof's philosophy as well. And I'm not always so sure that people pay so much attention to the fact that it's very much about values. It's one thing to talk about sustainability and systemic solutions, but we called our book, you know, Where People and Planet Matter, because unless you deal with these issues of fear and ego that Maria has already mentioned, the actual systemic solutions are not going to have as big an impact as we may well think that they could have. So for that reason, we have this particular approach where we start to talk about all of these things. Now, I just want to take
I would like to just compliment.
I'll just read the comments while Maria discusses.
I would like to compliment that system view, you developing, in order to develop a system thinking, a system way of seeing the world, is not like to learn a new tool. I have these steps and I will apply these steps. Is a changing, a very fundamental changing in the way we see the world and see other people in relationships. And there are some things behind it in order to be effective, this changing. For instance, when we develop a system view, we have to work with our ego, and we have to work with detachment, what we said before. Because when we understand that things are interrelated, and we realize that we are dependent on other people, and we are dependent, and at the same time we are dependent, we are part of this whole. So it's a change in the point of view that starts inside ourselves. This is why Simon talked about the human values. We do believe that the human values, you have to develop these human values inside yourself in order to be able to change the point of view. So systemic thinking is not something that you learn from outside in the sense of, oh, it's a new tool. No, it's a new way of seeing. So
also, I'd just like to say hello to some of the other people who are joining us. This Christopher, Aaron, and also Mira as well is listening in as well. So hello to you all. Christopher, you've just made, beg your pardon. Aaron has just made an interesting point. We're here in Brazil, and Aaron has asked, well, what would Petrobras have done things differently if they had applied systems thinking? Would it still be in trouble today? Now, this really builds on what we've been talking about human values, because one of the things that Maria has been doing in terms of strategy, I mentioned that Maria is, very well regarded as a strategic thinker, and she does work at the C-suite level, i.e. she works with company presidents, CEOs, and the most senior executives. And this is something Maria has actually been doing kind of behind the scenes in many of the Brazilian companies, really introducing human values. And I think one of the key points, there's many points we can make, but this is work that is not so visible right now, but it's been quite incredible. Some of the reactions of presidents, I'm not going to mention company names because they're kind of private companies, but we're talking banks, mining, really quite large conglomerates, and the most senior people are now really starting to pay attention to the values aspect, because they do, to some extent, they do already have a certain type of systems thinking. We need to remember that until quite recently, Petrobras was one of the best companies in Brazil. Maria and I know a lot of people who work for Petrobras, and these are good people, excellent scientists. So that Petrobras always ensured that they hired some of the best thinkers in Brazil. It was one of the top companies, but what happened was that at an executive level, the corruption came in. So this is an example of very good people working in a kind of broken system, or a system that became broken. It's not fair just to say, oh, it's Petrobras. There are some very good people there, but now we have to deal. Brazil is actually becoming a global example of how to deal with corruption systemically. So you don't solve the problem just at the level of one company. It has to be, corruption is systemic, and what we're seeing in Brazil are systemic solutions, because now we're seeing people in the legal system with deep values and this deep sense of purpose that they really do want to make the whole country better, improve the lives of Brazilians, make their lives better. And so the answer is that it's a systemic solution, the things that are happening in Brazil. I don't know how much is getting reported, but it's been quite incredible,
but
to witness.
And it's a good example that how important is which character and which kind of leaders you put in your company. Because it's showing us that how unsustainable is when you don't have values, and when you don't have values and you don't have the systemic point of view, because of course people are looking only for themselves and not for the company, the future, to really make the company strong, sustainable. So of course the system thinking helps a lot. So it's very important to leaders to have this kind of characteristics or qualities, the ability to see the whole, because if he is able to see the whole, is because it worked in the fundamentals, what is behind the system way of seeing.
We've had another great question from Bettina. Welcome to the call, Bettina. And she said, what is the most common resistance that we find in companies, if any, and when working to change the mindset from a linear perspective to a more systemic one? Now, this is something that, this is our business, so we're very happy. We're going to answer that in 2 or 3 steps, because it's an incredibly important question, and we'll now explain it in a few different steps. Because the first point I wanted to mention is that Maria and I, we've been working with systems thinking together probably since 2011.
Yeah.
When we really started to, the way Holonomics came about was that I was invited to create a course on complexity at a very wonderful business school in the south of Brazil called Sustentare. And Maria and I, we developed this course together, and Maria joined the course doing the facilitation, helping with a lot of the dialogue work as well. And then, so we've been doing systems thinking for a long time, but what we're finding now, there's been a change from 2011 to maybe the last year, couple of years. We've been talking about this quite a bit recently, in that this term systems thinking, it's actually quite a hot topic.
Yeah.
It's now kind of really coming to the attention to the top leaders in many organizations. So in terms of the resistance is reducing a little bit. The question is now, okay, people have heard this term systems thinking, but they don't really necessarily know exactly what it is. And this is why, Capra course is fantastic for certain executives to come and really go through this journey of 12 weeks. So there's that, but then I can't stress enough that we really work a lot at the level of mental models and how we construct reality. Now, I've brought in, I've got an example. It's really nice, Bettina. Thank you for your question.
Yeah.
Because what I've got here is a quote, and this quote comes from a discussion about systems thinking on LinkedIn. I don't want to, mention who wrote this, because that's not important, but let's have a look at this. This is someone talking about systems thinking in organizations. So their quote is, "The enterprise, i.e. a business, is just a tool, a technology for organizing the concentration of diverse efforts to create a surplus that can be shared with others. The tool is not what is important. It is the work, the wealth creation that the tool allows us to do that matters most." Now, this is really interesting. This is someone who's starting to think in terms of systems, but it's a very, very mechanistic concept of an organization. The enterprise is just a tool, it's a technology. There's no sense of livingness in this definition. There's no sense of wholeness, and there's no sense of the experience of being inside the living system. So this is the first thing. You really have to do a lot of diagnostic work, Bettina, with senior directors. You don't just jump in and start looking at systemic solutions. The quality of the diagnostics is absolutely important when doing a systems thinking project.
Yeah, and another thing that is important, mostly when we are talking about leaders, they are in their positions because they had success in their lives. Yeah, so they were promoted, or for some reason they are there. And so you can't just say you are wrong. This is, if you do that, you create more resistance.
Yeah.
And normally the traditional leader normally doesn't learn anymore.
Yeah.
We learn all our lives until we have a success, and so we become leaders, and so we stop learning. And as well, because there are much more responsibilities and have to create to give results, and etc. and etc. So they stop the process of learning. So in order to work with them, for instance, and I am concentrated in leaders, but it happens in other levels in organization, of course. You have to create an environment for learning. And when Simon says that nowadays there is less resistance into organizations, is because the way they used it to do things are not having success anymore as used it to. So they are a little more open to listen and say, oh, the world changed, is much more complex, so I really needed to see how to do things differently. So it's a learning process. And in a learning process, a good teacher, of course, he respects the knowledge of the other person. And when we are talking about adults, we have really recognized the whole experience, the whole knowledge the other person has. So in order to work with the change of mindset, it's to respect the other and to lead the other person in a way that he use their experience, their knowledge, in order to start think differently.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, there's a few questions coming in, so I'm trying to answer questions. So there's another great question from Christopher, who's saying, will you say more about the diagnostics you recommend before engaging on a particular project? Yeah, this is really important, Christopher, because one of the points I think we wanted to make in this introduction is that what we don't do is we don't enter a company and say, you need the systems view of life, or you need systems thinking. We go into a company and we really, this may sound a bit obvious, but I don't think it is, and I'll explain in a minute. We're really, in the diagnostic phase, you're really trying to get a good idea of what problem you're going to help the organization solve.
And in this point is very important to have a true dialogue with people, because normally people think the problem is one thing. Mm-hmm. But when you go further, you discover many times that the problem is probably something else, or the real problem is behind the consequences. Because normally when we have a problem, we deal with the consequence of the problem, and we have an idea of what is this problem. So it's very important in the first instance to talk to different people in the organization in this phase, in order to really try to understand which is the real problem.
Yeah.
And just one more thing. And people react when they really understand the problem. When you feel some pain is when you will try to solve this pain. So it's important to identify this pain in order to come with the solution, or to show that probably that the problem came because of the perspective the organization works with. And so if we enlarge, if we create a better view of the whole, we can better find a solution for that problem.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things I really want to share at this moment in time, it's a little bit controversial, but we talk about this a lot. There are a lot of people who kind of almost put themselves against organizations. They're quite angry, and especially in the sustainability world, you often find a lot of anger and a huge amount of criticism. But if you remember what Maria was saying, these organizations have been built on previous mental models, on previous values. So,
and had success.
Yeah.
If you have companies, for instance, that exist for 20 years or more, 50 years, they can show that I still here, so I had success.
Yeah, and so really what we're trying to say is what we attempt to do, we're very confident in the tools and our techniques and our approach, but humility is so important. It's a very, very powerful thing. Now, we teach leaders to develop humility so that they can see more of the system. Just an example, if you're arrogant and you're the type of leader who thinks you have every answer to every problem, then you're not going to see the other people in the organization. We very much, Holonomics is very much working about every single person in the organization. But we need to have humility as well, not to be critical, but as I say, to really start, and this impacts on your language, how you relate to people in these organizations, and not to say, oh, look at that, you're destroying this, you're polluting this, but to really go into a certain level to say, okay, we're going to diagnose some issues here. Is the problem in communication? Is it in training? Is it in process design? Is the problem in the strategy? And of course, this is all from a systemic perspective, because again, just as we mentioned Petrobras, you can't really just judge the whole organization and judge everyone in the same way. It's really about finding who are those people in the organization who are really going to start championing this new approach and the systems approach. So this is really, there's a big process in the diagnostics, but that's the stage when you really start to get a much wider buy-in. So we have these dialogue sessions where we really bring together different people from different parts of the organization. And in fact, in lecture 9 in the supplementary material, we showed you the Hoberman sphere. And again, it's really interesting, some of the very simple exercises that actually are very metaphorical and really start to get this message across that we need to start to think more systemically. And that we really use this. Yes, it is a children's toy, but in fact, it's a very, very wonderful contraption. And so, we talk about the fact that, well, look, guys, here we are together. Here's someone, I'm trying to think of a real case study without really mentioning anything. Here's someone in engineering, in construction, in operations, but then you've got HR over here, you've got the legal team, you've got purchasing and the commercial area. So there may be people purchasing equipment on a project, but because of the lack of communication, they don't really know what to purchase and when and in what volume. And there's no real dialogue. Everyone's got their own targets. But, when we show people that, you can have a much more expanded vision of the organization, people really...
And that everything is linked. So when you define targets, for instance, you define for each department, each area, if they are not aligned with the others, you have a very big problem. You have conflict inside the organization, because if you need your other area to help you to reach your target, and the other area has targets that are not aligned to yours, of course you have a problem installed inside the organization. So it's very important to understand that communication is the key tool to really implement the system view, because when more you communicate and you have quality communication, you will be more able to align the areas inside the organizations. There is.
We've got some more questions.
The humility one.
So where is it?
This new.
T, what is it? I don't know if Bettina, you're mentioning T, if that means teal. If you're referring to teal. We mentioned the dynamics of seeing, and it's very incredible, this humility, because we teach it in conjunction with mental models. We look at how we construct the world, and we actually had some feedback yesterday from one of our...
Trump.
Oh yeah, oh sorry, Trump, okay.
Trump world, okay.
We actually had some... We actually had some feedback from one of our clients, and that now when people are having their conversations, yes, there is still a bit of a clash of mental models, a kind of clash of ideas, but with humility and with values now operating in this company, people are much more respecting the points of view of others. And this is allowing them, I don't know about you, Marie, but I feel this is really allowing them to go much deeper into the systemic nature of the problem, because before maybe people would say, no, this is the problem and this is the solution. And there wasn't quite so much mutual exploration. But now after, some of the work we did, it was wonderful to hear that they're now still just pausing and they're mindful enough to say, hang on a minute, this is one of the situations that, Maria and Simon were referring to, and they're better able now to explore the solutions. And this is where, previously maybe you'd get resistance in one part of the organization who weren't so systemic in their thinking. Maybe they had a bunker mentality. Maybe they were just so focused on their own targets that they did resist change that was coming from other parts of an organization. But it's really wonderful to see now.
This comment of Bettina, I think, is very interesting. Yeah, this new Trump word as an advantage to teach humility to leaders. I think so. I do believe that anything happens by chance in the world. Yeah. So nowadays we have one leader that is not the position he's taking is not listening and not dialogue, use the dialogue as a tool to understand the problem and the system view and all of this. So in a very complex world that we are talking a lot for years now about the complexity that we have to co-create, we have to collaborate. So all these words are now better understood than before some years ago. So everybody, lots of people has the experience that if we have a true dialogue, if we have a true collaboration, we can go further. We can really find the solutions, better solutions and sustainable. So when we have some leaders that don't apply these concepts that are appropriate for this time of the world we live, it's more clear how it doesn't work. So, of course, we can use as a good example to teach humility and to show how humility, to be humble, is important, to really co-create, to collaborate, and they are characteristics important for this moment we live mostly.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Just a few more comments. Bill, it's great that Bill has mentioned he actually gives the Hoberman Sphere. I should mention this is a large Hoberman Sphere. It is possible to buy Hoberman Spheres. They're probably they're about the size of a tennis ball. Yeah. Or maybe a little bit bigger than a tennis ball, about that size. And that's a great way of helping people, remember and really, stick this. I love the idea. That's a great idea, Bill. And also someone mentioned Aria Arand, you're mentioning mirrors. That again is really interesting because again, in Holonomics, one of our chapters is dedicated to answering the question, what is a phenomenon? And the way we do this, we explore color. And so we use prisms and explore Goethe's theory of color as opposed to Newton's very kind of scientific conceptual conception of light. And this really helps to start to connect people back to the phenomenal world that we live in, because we can be so intellectual in our thinking that we kind of lose this connection to the world we experience. So it's great to hear that those of you have different approaches. Yeah. It's very much about what experiential exercises can we do.
There is that question very interesting. What if the leaders talk the talk, model it in their output, but can't see that their governance practices are still stuck in top-down linear practices? One important, I can say that in this case, storytelling helps a lot. Yeah. When we live in a world in which we separate things. We learn to separate and not to see the connections between them. So the leader learned to be top down, to have the solution, and they try to keep this way of doing leadership. But of course, it's not working anymore. But you have to help these people to really see that they are not doing the best. But it's not so easy. You make your other person to see their own actions. So, as I said, it's a learning process. So one very effective way of doing it is building stories, is real stories, of course. The stories from the whole, the company, you can start telling other things not to confront the person in the first moment, not to show, oh, what you did had this consequence. You can use other examples that are very clear to show that when you do this, the consequence is that, and you can build this confidence with the other person, and come to some examples that the top-down doesn't work anymore. So it's a way to do the other person see differently, because the point is drop the coin,
you have
to help
the penny drop.
The penny drop. You have to help the person to pen drop, because when it happens, you are in another level of consciousness, and so you are in another point of view, in another perspective of your own actions.
So yeah, finally, we're coming to the end of the masterclass now. Thank you for your questions. That question came from Claire. I just wanted to do, we've got another question from Bill. I wanted just to talk on one point in particular, which is how do you actually approach a company, and who in a company would be good to talk about systems thinking? And in fact, often a lot of our first contact is with people in HR, human resources departments. It's really interesting because traditionally, HR was seen as quite an operational role, kind of managing the payroll, making sure, just things ticked over, organizing some training. But now with the systemic view and a lot of these issues that we've been talking about all this morning, what we're really doing is we're helping HR departments become much more strategic, have a much larger role in the organization, and also we're helping them move from quite a fixed structure into working much more in a network, so that they can be much more responsive to the differing needs of the organization. Because as the organization as a whole changes, HR departments need to respond in a new way. So often when you're looking for contacts and people to talk to in major organizations, the HR department, it can often be a very good place to start.
Yeah, we have one more question from Bill. Very interesting. Yeah, this is very typical from of this moment we are living. So he asks about how to deal with clients that, of course, need results using their standard metrics. And of course, the change is not very quick. And so they have to use these metrics and the solutions for yesterday, very short-term results. Normally, the problem is not with the metrics. Of course, the metrics are very precise and they will indicate something. But normally, what you can work is with what is behind the metrics. Because, for instance, I have some metrics that will show the results, finance results. Yeah, it's a very resulting metrics. You can work adding new metrics or some others that are behind these resulting metrics, the driven metrics maybe, that show if you are considering everything, if you are considering the important things to measure that results. So in fact, it's possible to create a path in which you add some other informations and you add analysis, because normally the problem is that you don't have good analysis for the numbers. You only look at the numbers as a result and as the truth, but you don't relate these numbers with other things. So one way we work is to improve the analysis of the results and what is happening. And in this way, you can introduce practically a more systemic view of the results. So it's a way to do that I think is very useful.
Yeah, and what I want to do is I want to bring, I want to finish. I think I've got a way to finish
There is one more question.
I know there's a comment.
Yeah.
I'll build it in. I promise I'll build it in. But I want to try and finish where we started, and that's talking about the balanced scorecard methodology. Because one of the early questions was, how do you take people from kind of linear thinking to systemic thinking? But it's very interesting. Balanced scorecard is a way of developing multiple perspectives on an organization, and Maria worked with the developers, Kaplan and Norton, to actually develop strategy maps. Maria actually worked to develop this, so has got a lot of a lot of experience. But I think one of the interesting things is that when some people take that kind of tool, maybe there are consultants who help people to implement balanced scorecard. If these consultants only have a linear point perspective, they treat balanced scorecard as a linear tool. But in fact, when you understand balanced scorecard systemically, which is what the creators of the tool actually had, they actually had this original systemic vision. What we're doing is we're not really creating new tools. With our holonomics approach, we're really going underneath these tools and really looking at what are the foundations of the tools. And this is the problem with any number of models, or teal or spiral dynamics. It's the interpretation of people. It's not the actual tools and original thinking. Or design thinking is another example. The original insight was, how can we introduce the mentality of a designer at a much more senior level in the organization? But people have kind of turned it into a linear process that is not really delivering the results that the original insights were, really had the intention of. So this is the key thing. Bridget, when you talk about, the livingness, some people really only see these fixed tools as fixed. They see it as, right, here's template one, right, here's step one, we fill this in. And they're just thinking in fixed processes that can be implemented mechanistically, and it's going to have the result. But the reason we really talk a lot about the dynamic way of seeing is so that people can really start to evaluate, okay, where and make sense of complex situations, because this is, we haven't really talked about complexity, but it's when you start to see those aspects of an organization that are living, you really start to say, stop, this is not a linear process that this business methodology is referring to. It's helping us to really stop and think, what kind of intervention do we need at this moment in time? So we've come to the end. Thank you very much for your questions. Thank you very much, Yves, for contributing as well. The idea was that, please do continue this conversation on the alumni network, on the actual topic that I created, because I know that this will really also help Maria and I look at, well, what else do we need to discuss and help you guys with future masterclasses. I know, Yves, you're mentioning, sorry, let me just read it. Leverage points. That's a really great topic to be talking about. So if you could please give us some feedback, is this helpful? Obviously, we could bring one or two of you in the future. The idea isn't for Maria and I always to be talking, but we just wanted to really, start the conversation now with this particular introductory masterclass. And as I say, we hope it's been helpful. We hope we've given some, pointers, and hopefully, we'll be able to continue the support for you as you develop, your wonderful projects that, some of you have already been sharing, on Capra. So thank you very much. And
it would be nice to listen, as you said, the feedback and if you can send some points like Yves did, and we can prepare for the next talking. So if you can send us in advance, oh, it would be nice to talk about this and that, and so we improve our conversation.
Yeah, because again, especially with Maria and myself, we kind of have quite complementary backgrounds. So as I said, my background is in customer experience design, but it's really interesting. Some of our clients that they're asking us to do kind of projects that involve you know, the innovation team and HR together, and these are really interesting projects that I've not really seen in the previous years. So you know, companies' needs
to integrate,
their needs and requirements are changing. So again, you know, we're very happy to talk a lot about that and see how we can help you really start to look at what an organization is, how you can impact, where the leverage points are,
and what to practically do in order to implement in a very effective way. This is the point that we want to help and to discuss.
So thank you very much for listening, both those of you who joined us live. Thank you very much for your contributions. Also, if you're watching this afterwards, thank you very much for watching it. And you know, please continue to provide feedback, even if you're someone watching this in a few weeks' time, because also there'll be more alumni, you know, watching this as we do more Capra courses. So thank you very much. Have a good weekend, and we look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye now.